You know, for nearly 60 years, Star Trek has shown us a hopeful vision of humanity's future. So, why does the franchise itself suddenly feel like it doesn't have one? I'm coming to you guys today, a very upset captain. For those that don't know me, my name is Captain Shoff. I am 1/3 of the USS Treknopod's bridge crew. Each week, we have most recently been covering Starfleet Academy, their first season. And then before that, we were doing an Enterprise rewatch. We've also done previous recaps and reviews of Picard, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, tons of stuff. But I got to say, the situation we're in right now is alarming and concerning. Starfleet Academy has been canceled. It has already finished its production of season 2. So we do have 10 more episodes to look forward to. That is hoping that Paramount or Warner Brothers or whatever the entity ends up being that controls the fate of Star Trek, that they release the second season. I certainly hope they do. Because in my personal opinion, Starfleet Academy was an excellent first entry. As far as first seasons go with Star Trek, it was strong. It was a strong first season. Let's look back at any of the prior shows, especially old Trek. And it's not like old, right? But we talk about NuTrek, and that's like Discovery and everything that followed. But old Trek, the first seasons of those shows, not everything was great. Certainly not every episode was great. But we look at it so fondly, and there's that nostalgia that kicks in, and that helps us sort of feel that way about a show, about episodes that we've watched. But here we go. We've got Starfleet Academy, which had 10 episodes to wow us. 10 episodes to engage us. And I have to say, I think they delivered. But we're in this scenario now where a show that just finished its inaugural season was just told, guess what? After season 2, which they've already kind of hinted that it's going to end on a cliffhanger, is done. That sucks. And knowing what I've experienced in the comment section on TikTok, on YouTube, seeing people post things on Instagram, it's got me thinking a lot about just the voice of the people. And I guess I'm questioning whether or not we've really been hearing that voice of the people. It's really unfortunate that a show like Starfleet Academy, which was just getting going, is meeting its unfortunate and untimely end. It doesn't make sense. And it kind of brings up a question for me. And that question is, why is TOS? Why are TOS, TNG, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, why are they so revered? And yet NuTrek is deemed so divisive. It doesn't matter what NuTrek show that we're talking about, whether it's Discovery, which, my goodness, the amount of haters for that show was insane. When we hadn't had a Trek show on TV for, I want to say 12 years, maybe more. Don't quote me on this. I don't have the numbers in front of me. But to not just be grateful that Star Trek is back on your TV screens, like, if you're a true fan, that's crazy to me that you wouldn't be so jazzed to jump back into the world of Trek, that even if it wasn't 100% your cup of tea, that you wouldn't still support it. That to me tells me who the real fans are and who the fake fans are. Okay. But you've got other shows that came in this new Trek wave, right? We've got Picard. Now, arguably, not every season was strong. I would say the first season was the weakest of the 3. But interestingly enough, Picard did something in season 3 that you would have thought would have been the answer. Because if you're looking at these prior shows like TOS, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, they're so revered, and there's so much appreciation for the nostalgia of these shows. And these are characters that we know and love. And now you got a show like Picard, which brings them back. And what do people say? Oh, it's fan service. Oh, it's pandering. They're pandering to our fans. Why wouldn't we want to continue the adventures with the crew of the Enterprise D? Seriously. And then season 3 does it in spades. They bring back so many people, and they argue, oh, it's fan service. That's so obnoxious to me. So that tells me another thing. It's like, okay, well, when NuTrek tries to do something new, the voice of the people says, ugh, this is awful. This writing sucks. When NuTrek tries to do something like honoring what came before and then bringing it to the present timeline, continuing the lore, continuing, where we left off, and yet still, then they get told fan service. Then they get told pandering. There is no way to win with these toxic fans. Disco, good old Star Trek Discovery, they abandoned the entire concept of an ensemble approach. That dynamic was so evident in all the prior shows. I mean, when you look at TOS, you look at TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, you remember each one of those characters. You would look at the bridge and you'd be able to name them all. And that didn't mean that you were that you were just this like world-class Trekkie. It was just easier. Why was it easier? Because they made the focus on the ensemble. It wasn't about any one person. Discovery decided to kind of flip that on its head, do something a little different. And it's okay to do new things, to test the waters and try something else out. And that's what they did. They decided to focus their efforts on one. I mean, it's more than one, but primarily on the journey, both internally and externally, and the career of Michael Burnham, a female protagonist who was not even a captain when she first started on the show. She was essentially like a first officer. And she goes through some serious change. She's not a static character at all. She grows, she changes in very dynamic ways over the seasons. But the show itself focuses its attention on her and those who are adjacent to her. It does not focus on the crew, and it does not give the crew a chance to really establish themselves. And, I posed this question on TikTok a while back. I was like, can you name the entire crew of Discovery? And almost no one in the comment section could do it. I can't even do it. And I would declare myself a pretty strong Trekkie. Like, I know my stuff. But Discovery was a tough one. I was true to the show. I was committed. I saw it through all 5 seasons. I did not waver. I was a true fan. But the bridge crew, I had a tough time by the end of the show. I could not tell you. If my life depended on it, depended on being able to name everybody, I'd be done. It'd be over for me. So they try something new. The NuTrek abandons the approach of an ensemble dynamic, and they get hammered for it. Critics hate it. They're not giving the show the time of day. I mean, the amount of disdain for Discovery is not talked about enough. I mean, it's talked about in the comments about, oh, I hate it, I can't stand it, terrible show, blah, 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 worst writing, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that the show lasted 5 seasons tells me that they were doing something right. And people just didn't give it the chance. And I think a lot of people will lean on the excuse, well, the writing sucks. But let's look back at old Trek. Was every single episode a banger? I mean, really? Looking back at the first season, I would even argue that Encounter at Farpoint for TNG is not a super strong episode. It's kind of boring, to be perfectly honest. And I love TNG. I love all the characters. I mean, that was my show. That was my entry point into Trek as a kid. And I'm so grateful for TNG. And even still, there are plenty of episodes that I'm like, ugh, this is kind of a slog to get through. Like, whereas NuTrek is exciting It's dynamic, it's different, it's visually stunning. I mean, the special effects have just gotten so incredible. We're doing a rewatch of Enterprise, and my co-host Factor will sometimes poke fun at Enterprise's special effects because, this is a show that existed during a time when visual effects were becoming much more apparent, and they were relying less on practical effects and moving more towards digital. But it showed. It was the early stages, and now we're in a spot where things look so photorealistic, and it's incredible. And the starships are super sleek, and everything is. We're in the 32nd century. Things look polished, and the show itself looks polished, and you can tell money is being spent on these episodes. And I just don't think it's getting the appropriate amount of appreciation. And that really makes me sad. Part of me thinks, and I'm trying to figure out, like, why is this the case? What is the reason for this? Why are we at this situation of where there's nothing else on the books for Star Trek? Like, yes, we have Strange New Worlds, season 4 and season 5, but there is nothing else in production, nothing in pre-production. We do not have any planned shows. There is one movie in development, but who knows what will happen with that, or if it will happen at all. And there used to be movies every few years. There used to be a show every few years. We're in a weird spot now. We're about to have a Trek drought. We're about to be without any new Trek content. And when Strange New Worlds does officially end, what then? I mean, I hope they have something by that point, something new. But what will happen? Will it be the same fans essentially arguing for its destruction? It certainly doesn't bode well when your own fans have essentially turned against you. That is a real problem. It also it tells me that the fans aren't true fans. But I think we're living in an unhappy society. I think that's part of it. I think that to some degree, we are just more unhappy, more miserable than we've ever been. And I think our first tendency is just to kind of spew that vitriol onto everyone and everything. And you always hurt the ones you love. And I think Trek, something that's near and dear to our hearts, is currently collateral damage because of everyone's collective misery. But I think it extends further than that. I was talking to my co-host, Captain Vactor, and he brought up this term that I had not heard before. And I kind of looked into it. He talked to me a little bit more about it, and I was like, you know what? This is kind of brilliant. And so I wanted to talk to you guys about it. He said, and I'm just going to quote him. I've got it right here on my screen. It says, "I really think there is a vocal minority," and that's the term I want to teach you all today if you don't already know about it. "I really think there is a vocal minority that is louder than the average fan. The internet was a mistake," he said jokingly. He said, "Platforms reward outrage, negativity, and controversy. So 10% of fans complain loudly, and algorithms push those complaints, making it feel like everyone hates it. However, most viewers are actually casual. They're neutral to positive in terms of how they feel about something, and they're just not posting online. Therefore, online sentiment is not equal to the actual audience sentiment." And I think that is really an intriguing concept to consider, because this is not just a Trek problem. This is just the problem with society right now. We live in an age of influencers, and we are being influenced. And what we watch, all of that is influenced. And believe it or not, these influencers have a lot more power than we give them credit for, because when you see how the sway, the quote unquote public opinion is so swayed by it, you can see that there is strength in what they say, even though what they say is kind of awful, kind of nasty. There were a few other things that he brought up, and I'm going to bring them up too, because I was so intrigued by excuse me, by what he said. And so I'm going to read to you a few bits more about that. I'm pulling it up right now. Here we go. So, this idea of a vocal minority, a small group of people who are disproportionately loud or influential compared to the actual size, has been around for a long time, even if the actual phrase came a lot later. So the concept, believe it or not, goes back centuries. So in ancient times, right, early political thought, philosophers noticed that small organized groups often dominate public discourse. By the way, I just got it's so funny while we're having this chat, this fireside chat, a notification came through on my phone saying Starfleet Academy canceled, but Paramount says that they're still committed to Star Trek. We'll see. We will see. But anyways, small organized groups often dominate public discourse. Thinkers observed how active minorities can shape public opinion in democracies. Later, sociologists and political theorists studied how organized minorities outperform passive majorities in influence. So there's a tyranny to the minority, which is a crazy concept to think of, right? You think of tyranny, you think of a king. And that's one person, but they have all the power. Same thing here. This vocal minority has all the power. And they're controlling outcomes because the majority of people are just disengaged. And that's a real problem. The phrase itself, vocal minority, it started appearing more clearly in the mid-20th century, especially in the 1940s to the 1960s. It was used in politics. It was used in labor disputes and also in media commentary. It's often contrasted with the silent majority, like we were saying, which is something that was kind of popularized by Richard Nixon. I am not a crook, not a crook. Now, at this point, why this whole thing became popular, and I think where the real problem is that prior to the internet, there were only so many voices that we were receiving, right? Like we would be getting newspapers, magazines, maybe once we got, television and radio became more involved, we would have interviews, but that's it. In fact, like there was a lot more, we didn't know how celebrities felt about things. We didn't know their inner political stances on stuff. It wasn't until the internet and social media that we started to see, oh, this person's crazy. We only knew them for their characters that they played. And we thought, oh, this person must be a really nice guy, or this lady must be so sweet because she played America's sweetheart in this movie, blah, blah, blah. And then you find out the complete opposite. And they're involved in scandal, and they've cheated on their partners, and they've embezzled, or whatever. But we find that through the advent of the internet, the true ugliness around us has become, I guess, just a little bit more public, easier to see, easier to witness, and also the internet has just given so many more people this power and given their voice a much higher volume. And so I think that's where, as influencers, as content creators, I think there's a real responsibility that's being missed. I think that, and part of the problem is, how do I put this? The algorithm is not your friend, right? It's one thing to be a content creator and to post about a show. Like for instance, on TikTok, I was posting pretty regularly on our Treknopod TikTok channel about how much I've enjoyed Starfleet Academy. And every time I would say something positive about the show, I would be met with stuff in the comments calling me a shill, that I was being paid by Paramount, that I was under Paramount's thumb, and they told me to say this, and I'm not. I don't know how many ways I can put it. I would show you my bank account, but no, Paramount has never paid me a cent. The reason why I say kind things about Star Trek is because Star Trek has always been there for me, and I love Star Trek. And even when it's not its strongest, I still support it, because Star Trek is more than one show. Star Trek is the sum of all parts. Star Trek is a way of life. It's a philosophy. And I think people have kind of forgotten that to some degree. And I think influencers have not done a great job in regards to that. Because what happens here, and this is where the algorithm comes back into play, you get people in the comment section who sort of command the engagement of the post. And think about it like hotel rating system, like, or maybe when you go on Yelp. Yelp is a good one. You go on Yelp. How often are you going to go on Yelp to talk about a positive experience, or even just a non-negative one? Maybe it was just an average experience. Are you going to go on Yelp and leave a review? Or are you just going to kind of keep that information to yourself? So are you more compelled then to only leave a review if it was overly positive or overly negative? I think those are the situations. And that skews the information. That is not representative of the whole. And I think that's where we're getting into the problem here with this algorithm, is that we're not really getting the big picture. We don't really know how people truly feel about the show. We only know how a handful of people feel about the show. And a handful of people are pretty pissed, are pretty upset, and cannot stand the writing of this show and think, oh, that's not Trek. That's not real Trek. And they speak so loudly that everyone else sort of shuts up and listens. And that's a real problem. But these loud commentators, they do not equal your real audience. They do not equal the real response to the show. Twitter outrage, right? that is not equivalent to what most people actually think. Just a handful. And I think that we got to keep that in mind. It's the hardest part. This is a vocal minority versus a silent majority. Can you imagine if the silent majority actually got involved? Then we would have a more statistically representable response. We would know how people truly felt. And I think if you really got a solid response about Starfleet Academy, I think you would see it was an overwhelmingly positive one. It was uplifting. It was interesting. It brought Star Trek to a new generation of people, which isn't that the point? Isn't the point of Star Trek to just continue to grow and develop, to continue to push the needle forward on progress, right? And the show did that. It did that in spades. And people fought it. People fought it for all sorts of stupid, bigoted reasons. And I felt very kind of overwhelmed by the negative, hateful response. It did prompt me to sort of take a step back and be like, do I really want to engage with these people? Is this really worth my time as a content creator? Yes, I get great engagement when people have bad things to say, but is that the kind of person I want to be? And the answer is no. I personally love Star Trek. It's one of my all-time true lifelong loves, and I will defend it until the day I die. And it makes me sad that there are other fans out there that are really bringing the future of Trek into question. I hope that this is not the end of Star Trek. I hope there's a future, and I hope that future continues to push boundaries and, I guess, make a difference. And I think that we as fans could make a much bigger difference if we stop being quiet and we start making ourselves known. If we like something, we should say it. I guess if I could give you one piece of advice, just as a person, and this is the way I live my life, and I have always lived my life. If you see somebody on the street and you think, wow, you know what? That person I love their outfit. I think they have it's a really pretty dress, or that's a cool hat, or I like your shoes. Most of the time, I don't think we're going to say it. I think we think about it. I think it crosses our minds, and then we just go about our business and we don't engage. Can you imagine like what effect that might have had on somebody if they heard it? Can you imagine the effect positive response would have on Star Trek and its future with Paramount? Something to consider. With that, I really hope for the future of Trek, and I hope it lasts. I hope it lasts forever. With that, live long and prosper.